dot dot dot. And now it says this hangout on air is live. So we are 2 minutes late, and we can blame that on a variety of things. But I did run with my suit. Well, I mostly walked. I ran some. Um, but parade of error. They're not all errors. Just things happened, and we weren't able to start on time. But I am here, and my hair is slightly wet because it's raining in Baltimore today.
Has it been raining in Baltimore for like 3 days? It's been raining here for like 3 days straight.
No, it snowed on Sunday, and I don't know what their radius around Baltimore is for closing Hopkins. But the streets in Baltimore had like literally zero snow on them, and they canceled classes and workers. They closed the offices.
Yeah.
So I didn't go in on Monday, which was great, and I had thought on Sunday when I sort of saw this coming that would mean that we could up our schedule on getting our crowdfunding campaign going. But I wasn't able to get all that done on Monday, partially because I still am going back and forth between being sick and not so sick, which was one of the main reasons I didn't just take off and walk. When I was, no one knows this, but I was sort of having this internal discussion and told you that I was going to walk, and then was like, oh, it's raining. This is a bad idea. Yeah. So anyway, there is a crowdfunding campaign coming. You will hear more about that presumably on the 29th, in 10 days when we have our next show. But there's nothing to report today other than that's happening. One thing that I do want to talk about before we get into your 20-minute monologue on basketball is that Julian Green has decided to play for the U.S. men's national team. And
Yes.
I noticed that you are wearing a U.S. men's national team jersey.
I was actually wearing this before I saw that. This was my go-to shirt for the pod today, and I went on there and saw that and saw the good news.
Yeah. So Julian Green, for those that aren't aware, plays for Bayern Munich. Now
He plays for the B team usually, right?
yeah, he has played for the A team in the past, both in actual competition and on sort of preseason tours and such. So who knows? This could. Well, it won't turn out to be another Freddie Adu in some respects, almost certainly. But he's only 18 years old. He's unproven, but incredibly talented, and I really don't think that he's going to make any impact whatsoever on the 2014 World Cup squad, although he may be a part of that team. He may start making an impact by 2018, but you've got to think the real eye here is for 2022 with him. So that's what Klinsmann has got to be thinking about, bringing an 18-year-old in. So
Yeah, and I mean it could be by 2018. I mean that's 4 years. He'll be 22.
he'll be 22. There aren't many 22-year-olds that are
Just make a huge impact at least.
right. I mean at that level. He could be starting for Bayern Munich, and that would be huge for the U.S. men's national team. But if he's starting for Bayern Munich, that means that they're more than likely foregoing, big names to keep their sort of homegrown talent there. I'll believe it when I see it. Let's just leave it at that. So I don't know much of anything about college basketball, but you decided mostly, and I agreed, to have a college basketball themed show. Now, there is a long history of basketball on Sportazine, mostly not involving me. Jeff, I'm forgetting his last name. Powers is what's coming into my head, but it's not that Jeff, because there's two. Jeff Hess did a lot of basketball stuff. He's the one that set up our bracket challenge on ESPN last year. I'm not going to read out this whole URL because it's long and it's got a bunch of numbers. Actually, if you go to the bracket challenges and you're looking for the group ID is 106553. And so for those that have been following us since the bowl games back in January, what we do when we have one of these is the winner comes on the show. They don't have to if they don't want to, but they get to come on the show and basically talk about whatever they want. So we've got show notes planned out for a while, just sort of like these are the games that we should be looking at for this week. But when the tournament's over, we'll schedule that week for you to come on if you're the winner and for us to talk primarily about sports. If there's other things you want to promote or talk about, then we can do that too. We never got Kevy to come on after he won the MLS challenge, but Kevy will be on again at some point. Probably not as a regular, but at some point I'm pretty sure he's going to be back on. So, and if it's you and I that win, then well, we just get to talk about what we want to get to talk about. Yeah. But that's basically what we get to do every time anyway. So.
Pretty much.
So I just found out, looking at the show notes, that we both have picked Florida to win the national championship.
Indeed.
This is in stark contrast to everyone else on the planet who has picked Michigan State to win the national championship.
A 4 seed. A 4 seed.
Yeah, I mean, like literally everybody on Bracketology and ESPN has picked Michigan State. Obama picked Michigan State. I'm sure there are people somewhere that have picked someone other than Michigan State. I happen to know that Wendy picked Wisconsin. I have tried to persuade her that that's a poor decision if she actually wants to win. However, Wisconsin, little known to all but the, I would say, but the true basketball fans. I don't know if this, I'm like a Kentucky basketball fan, but I don't know if I'm a true college basketball fan. But I do happen to know that Wisconsin does have a national championship. Now, it was all the way back in 1950, if I remember correctly. People think of Wisconsin as a gridiron school. They've never won the gridiron national championship, but they have won the basketball national championship. So I just don't think they're going to do it this year.
No, neither do I. We both picked Florida. I did see that. I don't know if that's our Kentucky basketball heritage wanting to stay in the SEC or if that's us picking chalk because they are the #1 overall seed. They are the team that looks the best, so and seems to be the most complete. And so that usually is the team that you want to pick. But how often does that happen? Not very often.
Well, I mean, it could obviously be anybody on any given night, but who realistically is going to beat Florida? I mean, that's the question. I mean, what are the people that are picking Michigan State, are they picking them because of matchups, or are they picking them because they just don't think Florida is that good? This is something that I don't know the answer to, and I'm hoping.
I think that they see Florida and look at how weak they think the SEC is, and so they think, okay, they won an SEC on a year where Kentucky was down, like hardly anybody else made the tournament. Tennessee came in the first four, in the first 4 game against Iowa, which I believe is tonight. So that the SEC just doesn't look good, but that they could have said the same thing the year Kentucky won the national championship. The SEC rarely looks great.
I mean, it's interesting because, the Big Ten has only had Michigan State winning the national championship in the last forever, however many years.
I think my dad looked at, our father looked at it. It was 1990, I think he went back to. The only Big Ten school that has won is Michigan State in 2000.
Yeah, and so Arkansas, Florida, and Kentucky have all won from the SEC.
Kentucky 3 times, Florida twice, Arkansas once.
So, I mean, that's not this year, obviously, but you have to believe that they're picking Michigan State. Well, I mean, it's Tom Izzo, so, I mean, I guess there's that. It's a little bit different than just picking based on heritage. I mean, 2 of those Kentucky wins were with Pitino, and Arkansas coach is not there anymore. Of course, Billy Donovan does have 2 national championships. Yep. So, I mean, if you're just comparing coaches.
Yeah, I mean, 2 national championships to 1. I mean, 2 is greater than 1, last I checked. But it is a different year. It's surprising to me, And I don't know if you've had discussions with Father about this, but I certainly have, is how overrated the Big Ten always seems to be. Which was exactly why he looked this up, was, once since 1990, and yet, Michigan State, who was ranked like 20th in the nation and then won the Big Ten tournament over Michigan, that means that they're the best team in the country and they're going to win the national championship. I don't see that.
Yeah, I mean, so there is some historical precedent for that, but it's old. I mean, Indiana has won 5 national championships. Of course, I mentioned Wisconsin has one. Michigan State has 2. So, they're there. I mean, but if you just look at a conference-by-conference ranking, the Pac-12 has the most, followed by the ACC, followed by the SEC, and then the Big Ten. So, even if you're looking at a long view of history, the Big Ten is not. I mean, an American who was completely just got the shaft by the committee, they're after the Big Ten. They have 8.
Yeah. And
so
most of those are probably the same schools. I would say several of those probably have multiple.
Well, be that as it may. I mean, obviously Kentucky has most of those from the SEC, but the Big Ten hasn't won since 2000, and the SEC has won 3 since then.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think we should just go ahead and look at what we think is going to happen in this tournament, and maybe we can have some more discussion on that as we're going along. I try to do my brackets in a conference by conference, kind of style. I try to watch all of the teams that I think are going to be in. It's really hard when there's 68 and you really have no idea who's going to make it at the start of the season. You have a good idea, but you never fully are sure. And so I tried to take a look at all of the teams that I could. Did not see very many Pac-10 games, or whatever they're going by now, even though I think they have like 12 schools.
Pac-12.
Pac-12. Okay, they are going by Pac-12.
Pac-12.
Didn't see many of them. Did watch a few of the Big Ten games. Watched a lot of the SEC games against Kentucky and some against Alabama. Watched a lot of the ACC. And so I know what those teams kind of have to offer, and that's kind of what I use to kind of base my predictions. My Final Four is right now, and I'm probably not going to change it. I think I'm done with this. Is mostly 1 seeds. It's Florida, Arizona. I have Wichita State, believe it or not, and Iowa State. Those are my Final Four picks. I picked Wichita State to go to the Final Four last year, and they did. So I am not, prepared to jump off Wichita State bandwagon until somebody proves me wrong. Rain, hail, sleet, or snow, they have showed up for me in the tournament so far. Again, Florida, Arizona are the top 2 teams. They're the most well-rounded teams, I think, in the tournament. I haven't gotten a chance to see much of Arizona, but I'll take everybody else's words who say that they're a pretty well-rounded team. I have seen Florida a few times. They're good offensive and defensive. They can be tied at halftime and then shut a team, beat a team 40-20 in the second half and end up winning by 20. And those types of teams, if they can shut you down and frustrate you, they're gonna be successful. And I have Iowa State. Something about watching Iowa State in the eye test. They're gritty. They don't want to lose. They seem to have 3 very capable scorers. And maybe if one of those has an off night, they can lose. Maybe they need all 3 of them to be on to make it to the Final Four. I've just seen it from them day in and day out, and they did win the Big 12 tournament for what that's worth.
Yeah. I have Iowa State losing the UNC. Iowa State's a 3, UNC is a 6, but I think UNC kind of got the shaft on the seeding.
Yeah.
You know a lot more about UNC than I do, but it seems like they are a very erratic team. They can beat good teams, but they can lose the bad teams.
Yeah, and I'm worried about what I saw down the stretch from them. The last, I guess, 2 games that they played, and even the last 2 games that they did lose, and even the last ones that they did win, their offense is just out of sync. and it seems like they rely on Page too much to come up with something from nothing, which works in some cases, but other times it's too little too late. That's what happened in the Pittsburgh game. It's kind of what happened in the Duke game, and some of their games that they did win, they did manage to squeak it out. I'm really worried about them. Of course, I wish they could go to the Final Four, get some revenge on some teams on the way. Virginia, if we're matched up, somehow play Michigan State. UNC always seems to beat Michigan State no matter what. So I would prefer to see Michigan State in the Elite Eight because I think we could win.
So I have Michigan State in the Elite Eight, but I have UNC losing to Villanova. So that's based on nothing other than, hey, Villanova's a 2 seed. They're probably pretty good. So that's my analysis.
I have St. Joe's actually the 10 seed beating Connecticut and Villanova. I was kind of with the committee on this. I didn't really like the American Conference this year. I thought Louisville is a good team and they deserve to be higher than a 4 seed. But just watching those Cincinnati-UConn games are just difficult to watch. The offenses seem out of sync. They just seem like a bunch of athletic guys thrown out there with the basketball, and it's just hard to watch. I can't trust that.
So I'm going to make an analogy to, well, not that I don't know things about basketball, but to a sport that I know something about. Watching Chelsea is always pretty painful, and always has been, but they're pretty good. So I don't think the hard to watch test is necessarily the greatest test of who's good and who's not. I mean, if they're making silly turnovers and stuff like that, that's one thing. But if they're just, not flashy, then I don't know.
Well, it's not that they weren't flashy. It's that the offenses looked incapable against the other teams, and I don't know if they even if any of the teams had big non-conference wins. Like, yes, they could beat up on each other, and they had 3 or 4 really good teams, Louisville, Cincinnati, Connecticut, just to name a few. But I don't know where their non-conference was, and that's a discussion for another time, is that I don't like the setup of the season where it's play all your non-conference games that show how good you are to other conferences, and then play all of your conference games. But that's a discussion for another time. I'm down on the American this year, and they could easily show me, prove me wrong.
Well, is the American, are they like a 1-year conference? I didn't quite understand this, because Louisville is moving to the ACC, right?
Yeah, Louisville's coming to they're leaving the AAC and joining the ACC. I don't know what's going to happen with the rest of schools, if they're taking it on a year-to-year basis or not. I would assume that they're going to try to keep it and make it work, but I don't know what they're going to pick up, who they're going to pick up near the caliber of Louisville.
I mean, it seems like so does Conference USA still exist?
Yes, isn't Tulsa? Where's Tulsa? Tulsa is a 13 seed. They are out of Conference USA. They went 13-3.
Okay.
USA.
Because back before the Big East had 1,000 teams in it, and then decided to whatever the Big East did. The Conference USA was not a very good conference. I mean, they were like a power conference or something, but they were definitely the worst of the power conferences.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's where the American is headed, but maybe they're fighting with Conference USA for that last power conference sort of first. So the Conference USA has UAB, East Carolina, Florida Atlantic, Florida International, Marshall, Middle Tennessee State, Southern Mississippi, Louisiana Tech, North Texas, Rice, UTEP, Texas San Antonio, Tulane, Tulsa, Old Dominion, and Charlotte. Although those last two are non-football members.
And I think Tulsa is Tulsa the only team in the tournament from there, and they won their conference tournament, and they're a 13 seed. I'm trying. I don't think there's another team from the Conference USA even in the tournament. That's how far, they've kind of fallen over the years.
Yeah, where is Marquette now? Are they in the Big East since they're
They are,
Catholic?
yeah, they
Since
are
it's
in
like
the
the
Big
big
East.
Catholic now.
Yeah, with who's else in there? You got Creighton, Villanova, Providence. I'm pretty sure Marquette is still in there, although they didn't make the tournament, so it's hard for me to check based on where I'm at.
Yeah, so it says another 5 schools, DePauw, Marquette, Seton Hall, St. John's, and Providence, discontinued or did not have football programs. So that's, they're in the Big East that don't have football gridiron. But I was just reading what Wikipedia said. So.
Well, let's see. I'm wrapping around. I mean, when you're picking the bracket, like your key points usually, and if you want to get the most games right, I would start with the national championship game. I actually have Florida and Wichita State. I have Wichita State over Arizona, and work your way backwards. But what I've found if you do that is you may run up into a potential matchup issue. But betting college basketball or trying to make some sense of what's going to happen when you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds, it's difficult. That's why it's not easy to pick the national champion every single year, or even the national championship game. So we both think Florida is the best team, and I don't know of a team that could potentially be a matchup problem for them. The only issue I could even really see of them getting out of the South is if Embiid comes back for Kansas and Wiggins keeps playing at the great play that he's given them right now, plus a good Embiid would be coming in from nothing. Maybe Kansas wins that, and a lot of people are saying if Embiid's back, Kansas is going to win. Embiid's been out for a few weeks, and you're going to throw him back into the lineup. You see these issues with in the NBA when you put Russell Westbrook back in the lineup, when you put Dwayne Wade back in the lineup. The teams, they're not right at the first, and if you do that in the March Madness, it's just I don't see it panning out for Kansas to be able to beat Florida in the South, and I don't see another team capable. I mean, if Syracuse can somehow bring back their, first 25 winless streak, bring back that form, maybe. But I feel like Florida could shoot them out of the zone. At least do better against most teams against Syracuse. But people do remind me all the time that if you've got a day or two to prepare for that Syracuse zone, that's what gets you with the zone. It's not that they're good necessarily all the time. It's that you've got a day to prepare and you're not ready for it. And that's where Syracuse will get you.
That seems kind of bizarre to me. I mean, like, do kids not play against zones in high school? It's not matched.
Well, they might do it at the high school level, but I feel like once you get into AAU ball, it's all, mano a mano, man to man. Let's see who the bigger dog is. And I don't know.
So just so people know, you and I both played high school basketball.
Yes.
So, but neither one of us played AAU basketball. We both played the equivalent for football, but there's not AAU football to my knowledge.
No. I think there's AAU baseball and basketball, but that's it.
Okay. So I don't really know, much about the AAU system. I watched the Lynn Sanity documentary the other day, and he talked a little bit about AAU. And I've heard of AAU, but aside from that, I don't know much.
Well, it's again a discussion for another day, but it's just this, let's get all of these basketball players and try to find like these raw talents and try to get them to have big names and show up, how athletic they are. And it seems like it's all a show. It's all for money. And it doesn't really help the kids learn fundamentals. It just learns them how to try to be a star. And I have big issues with it, but the way that it's currently kind of used. So I don't think that they would run a lot of zone in it. Although I could be, somebody could come on here and prove me wrong.
I want to change subjects just briefly to say that Robin Van Persie has a hat trick, and I know that I'm going to jinx them, but I'm going to do it anyway. And should the scoreline stay the way it is, which I'm sure by the time the show is over, they'll have given up a goal because they're just terrible at defense. But Manchester United will be going through to the last 8 after just being pathetic for the rest of the year. So,
are they at Old Trafford right now?
They're going to be as good in Europe as they are in the Premier League, if not better.
Are they? Is this game at Old Trafford?
It is at Old Trafford. So the 2-0 loss was in Greece. I don't know where Olympiakos is, if they're in Athens or some Sparta or something. Is Sparta even a place? I don't even know.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it was a place.
So,
but anyway, that's happening. So.
If Olympiakos scores a goal, they win on the away goal.
Exactly.
So they need to.
So it could change pretty easily. But anyway, I just that's happening like as we're speaking. So I wanted to bring that up.
Okay.
So I don't know if you have anything you want to say about the D2 or D3 tournaments or about the women's tournament. I've got the links in the show notes so people can check out the women's brackets. The main reason I don't think we're going to spend much time on the women's stuff is because we're not doing a women's bracket. I actually paid some attention to the women's tournament last year just because I would take breaks from studying and I had cable at the time, and women's basketball was on, so I would watch it, and I would have something to write about on the sportazine.com website. And but this year I haven't watched, and I want to say something else about the watching habits. I can't remember what all games were on, but at the beginning of the season, I was living in New England, and I don't care about college sports in New England except hockey.
Yeah.
And you get some games on TV like the main UNH gridiron game in the D1AA tournament. That was on TV, and I watched some of that. And there's games, but it's all schools that are. I mean, some of the names are big name schools: MIT, Harvard, etc., Yale. But from a sporting aspect, most of those schools are generally not very good, except at hockey. I mean, BC is great at hockey. UNH is great at hockey. There's a lot of good hockey schools up there, but they just don't do a lot with the other schools. I mean, BC every once in a while is good at basketball or gridiron or something, but aside from that, I'm struggling to think of any off the top of my head that are any good up there. Even occasionally. So not worth really thinking about. But so that was, where all of my viewing was all these like little schools that are now not in tournaments. Although Harvard is in the tournament for the 4th year in a row. So
UMass is also in the tournament.
Yeah, UMass is in it, and they have been good in the past. That's probably a topic for another day as well.
904 and 96 or somewhere in there.
Yeah, that was when Calipari was coaching there, which is why that I thought perhaps it was another.
Well, it was probably vacated, so it probably didn't even exist.
Right, exactly. So,
we didn't.
So anyway.
I didn't get to hear your take on what you think of the potential Kentucky-Wichita State matchup, or if you even think Kentucky's going to beat Kansas State. So they're the one team that I would think that you would know the most about.
Yeah, so I actually have Kentucky in my Final Four, not because they've proven over the course of the year that they're one of the 4 best teams in the nation, but they seem to be putting things together. The question is our team's going to figure out Julius Randle? He seems to be able and willing to take the team on his back, and Calipari seems to have figured out that that's what needs to happen in order for them to win. Now, Randall's decision-making is not great, and who knows if he'll go to the NBA or if he'll stay for another year. I think he could be, potential National Player of the Year quality next year if he decides to stay. But his decision-making is perhaps, that could be improved. But the raw talent and the physical attributes, they're all there. They could lose in the first round, and my bracket could be toast. But, and obviously they have a big game against Wichita State. But they've proven that they can beat Louisville. Whether they can do it a second time, I don't know. And then I just could not pick Duke beating Kentucky in the Elite Eight. I can't do that.
I had Texas coming in over Duke. Then I realized I should probably back off of that because that's probably just my not wanting to pick Duke to the Elite Eight.
Yeah.
So I
have Texas losing to Arizona State, actually.
Yeah, that's how my friend Chase has the same thing.
So, I mean, it's a crapshoot, and I admittedly do not know enough to be giving people advice, except, I mean, Wendy listens to me, except, not with Wisconsin winning. She doesn't listen to me about that, but, aside from that, she's like, well, you know more than I do, which is pretty low bar, but also true. So,
there is no set rule. If you're trying to win a bracket pool or anything, I would almost always pick the higher seed, just because chances are that's what's going to happen. You have your occasional 15/2s that can really bust some things up, so you do need to feel pretty confident that they're going to win. I can remember a few years ago when Missouri was a 2 seed and lost to a 15 seed. I don't even remember. I think it was Norfolk State up in Virginia, and I would have never thought that was going to happen. But it did, and so you're right. It's a crapshoot. You never have any idea what's going to happen. Although chances are a 16 seed's not going to be the one. It's happened in the women's.
It's come close a couple times too. I mean,
I thought
lost by a point.
I think NCAA had Pittsburgh or UConn on the ropes one year.
Yeah, in '89, I think it was 2 number 1 seeds won by a single point. So Georgetown almost lost to Providence, and I don't remember what the other one was, but It hasn't happened, but eventually there'll be the right combination of, the placement and the injuries and the 16 seed being underrated. I think that's really what's going to happen for it to be. I mean, a true 16 seed is not going to beat a 1. But, right. I mean, I guess to a certain extent, almost by definition, but not exactly by definition. But I think that, maybe that 16 seed should have been a 14, a 13, something like that. But they get overlooked for whatever reason. Maybe there's some weird conference realignment like this year with the American. And, it wouldn't be at that level. It would be at the smaller conferences. But you get some conference realignment, and then there's a new conference. It's not really taken that seriously. But the team is really good, and maybe the signs were there. Maybe they had a couple scalps to say that they deserve to be in the tournament, but they get put at the 16, and then they get another scalp. That's probably what's going to happen, I would think. The thing about the 16 seeds that bugs me is these first 4 games. I don't mind the first 4 games, but it seems to me that those should both be 16 seeds.
Well, two of the games are. You're saying that all 4 of them should all be the 16 seed?
Yeah, I mean, what kind of sense does it make for? I mean, I guess you're rewarding the conference champions. If that's what the reasoning is, then I'm okay with that. Why is the play-in game against Wichita State? If Florida's the overall number 1 seed, the play-in game should be against Florida.
Actually, one of the play-in games was against Florida. It was Albany, and who did Albany beat? Like Mount St. Mary's or something. Mount St. Mary's. I think it was Mount St. Mary's. So
that's already showed up on my bracket. So
yeah, they update those as soon as they're done. Just like NC State is in there, it's not NC State or Xavier. So Albany was the play-in game, and they did win last year. My guess for the reasoning is that it's about wanting to see the last 4 teams in, to see who really deserves it of the last 4 in that weren't automatic qualifiers.
So were the 16 seeds that played yesterday, were they conference champions?
Yes, they were.
So, I mean, doesn't make any sense then.
My guess is that they want it to be more entertaining, so they're going to put some better teams. I mean,
that's fine, but what I think they should do is they should reward the teams that win their conference, either a conference tournament or, like in the case of the Ivy League, where they don't have a conference tournament, they just win the championship.
Yeah.
That's what they should do. But it's not.
You're saying that it should be maybe all 4 of the games should be non-automatic qualifiers.
Yeah. I mean, either do it's all 16 seeds or it's all non-automatic qualifiers, one or the other. Let's do Tennessee and Iowa, because then it's just the luck of the draw. You have you don't know what to expect. I mean, I don't know. If I were a coach, I'd be irritated having to play one of those first games. I mean, I guess you'd be happy that you're in the tournament at all, but I don't know.
Well, it's to get teams like Cal Poly, who are 13-19, or at least I think that's what they were. I don't know if that's because I can't check right now. I think they're 13-19, and so do you really want them in the field of 64? Probably not, but you're going to give them a chance against another automatic qualifier, and so maybe that's not showing good faith or goodwill towards Texas Southern, having them be in that game. But a team that's under 500. Or I think in Mount St. Mary's or Mount St. I'm sorry if you know what it is and I don't. It's Mount St. Harry's, Mount St. Holland's, Mount St. something. All right, they were 16-16. And those teams, do you really want a team that's 500 or less in the field of 64 after the second round? I don't, unless they truly deserve it. But in your case, they truly deserve it because they won their conference tournament.
Right, exactly.
So I agree with you. It should be one or the other. All 16 seeds is how I would lean. But the last 4 in, I guess it makes for a good show. I didn't get to see the NC State Xavier game last night, but this Iowa-Tennessee matchup could be really good.
So just for the record, I have NC State winning against St. Louis. So
I do too. I do too.
You know.
I also have Tennessee, who I think will beat Iowa, beating UMass, but that might be a little bit of the SEC kind of bias in there. But I
have that as well. Of course, if it's Iowa, then I guess you have a day to change those. So if the team, if you thought the NC State was going to lose, and you're looking at your bracket right now, maybe you should look at that St. Louis NC State game again.
Yeah.
So, and the same thing after tonight's game. So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think if Iowa does win, then it's UMass, but I guess I'll have to remember to go in there and change that.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to leave it the way it is. I'm just not. I mean, I know UMass had the incredible start to the year, but that was the end. This is now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I was about to say Bruce Pearl, Tennessee, and I was like, is he still at Tennessee? I was like, I don't think he is. So I looked it up, and actually yesterday, Bruce Pearl was hired by Auburn as their head coach. So.
Mm.
I don't know who the Tennessee head coach is, but it's not Bruce Pearl.
No. He's been working at ESPN the past year or two.
Nice. So, I'm all basketballed out. I wish I had more to say, but I think that's pretty much all I can say without just spewing BS. So.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I feel like too. I mean, we could break down the individual matchups. I don't think that's necessary. People can look for themselves, and if they want another person's opinion, they can either ask us or ask somebody else if that's what they really care.
Yeah, so comments are always open on the site when I post these, and they're also open on YouTube. And if they're not for some reason, people can email me. It's douglas.whitfield@law.unh.edu, and I can try to see what's going on with the comments on either of those. I do want to say that even though we won't be doing full-on basketball shows the rest of the tournament, we will go over anything that's particularly interesting on our next show, which is 10 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time on March 29th, and then the next show after that on April 12th, we'll discuss the national championship game and anything that happened in after the 29th. So I'm going to give you one last chance if you got anything to say, Evan, and then I'm going to close this out.
No, I'm just looking forward to March Madness. I think this is going to be a good month of basketball, and I'm ready to see how this is all going to play out.
All right. Well, this has been TINT, the premier free culture sports podcast.